I prefer not to reveal my real name. I'm just a trucker who's been behind the wheel for over 20 years. I've seen my share of odd things on the road, but nothing prepared me for what happened one chilly autumn evening. I had been given what seemed like an easy gig, a refrigerated load pickup from a private warehouse to deliver to a local medical facility. It sounded routine enough, and I was looking forward to a quiet drive down the interstate. When I arrived at the pickup location, things already felt off. There were no company logos, no signs, nothing to indicate that this was an official site. I pulled up to an isolated, nondescript building tucked away behind a row of older industrial structures. The only person in sight was a solitary man standing near the loading dock. He wasn't wearing a uniform or any form of identification. He looked like any other guy you might pass on the road. Without offering any paperwork or clear instructions, he simply handed me a sealed trailer that was already locked. "Drive straight there," he said in a flat tone. "No stops." I hesitated for a moment, but the offer was too good to pass up, so I followed his orders. I emerged onto the highway, the hum of my engine and the drone of the tires on asphalt my only companions in the fading light. The cargo was secured, and I assumed the sealed trailer contained perishable medical supplies. About halfway through my route, however, I began hearing an odd thumping sound. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable over the low rumble of the engine. But soon it grew into a persistent, rhythmic pounding that seemed to emanate from deep within the trailer. My gut told me something wasn't right. Despite the strict instruction of no stops, I couldn't ignore the sound. I pulled over to the side of a deserted stretch of road, my heart pounding in my ears as I parked. With shaking hands, I retrieved a pair of bolt cutters from my truck's toolbox and broke the padlock securing the trailer door. The metal clanged ominously as I pried open the door, and that's when I saw her. A woman lying inside, barely conscious and shivering violently. She was handcuffed, her face ghostly pale, and her lips were tinged with blue from the cold. As I carefully eased the door open wider, she gasped for air, her eyes fluttering open in a mix of terror and confusion. For several agonizing seconds, I stood frozen, unsure if I was witnessing a cruel mistake or something far more sinister. Then, adrenaline surged through me. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, my voice trembling as I described the situation to the dispatcher. I stayed on the line, my eyes locked on the woman's weak form, as I tried to offer her reassurance despite the rising panic inside me. When the police arrived, I learned that the woman had been reported missing from a town 2 states away. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had nearly unwittingly become a courier in a human trafficking operation, delivering a victim to an unknown fate. The grim possibility that I might have played a role in something so dark left me reeling long after the officers took over the scene. Yet, the mysteries did not end there. When the authorities returned to the pickup location to investigate, they discovered that the warehouse had vanished without a trace. No records, no employees, nothing to confirm its existence. Even more baffling was the man who had loaded my truck. Despite multiple inquiries, he was never identified, as if he had simply evaporated into the night. The unanswered questions gnawed at me for months afterward. Now, every time I hit the open road, I'm gripped by an inexplicable sense of unease. I constantly check my mirrors, half expecting to see a shadow lingering just out of sight. Sometimes, when the silence of the cab is broken by a faint, irregular thumping noise in the back of the trailer, I'm transported back to that desolate roadside stop. The memory of that night is a constant. Unwelcome companion. A reminder that even the most routine job can spiral into a descent into darkness. I share this account not to sensationalize a tragedy, but as a cautionary tale. There are dark corners in this world, hidden within everyday routines, where inexplicable horrors lie in wait. Though I tried to move on, the unanswered questions and eerie details of that night continue to haunt me. I still don't know who that woman truly was or how she ended up locked inside that trailer. Nor have I ever discovered the identity of the man who loaded it, or the whereabouts of the phantom warehouse. Every mile I drive now serves as a reminder that in the blink of an eye, an ordinary day can become a journey into the unknown, a journey into a darkness that defies explanation. And as I roll on the highway, the memory of that haunting night lingers like a shadow over my every turn. I've been a trucker for over 20 years, and I've seen my fair share of long, lonely nights on the road. I prefer to keep my real name hidden, so you can just call me the driver. What happened one chilly night at a Kansas rest area still haunts me. I had been on the road for 14 hours straight, hauling a load across the Midwest. My eyes were heavy, and the monotony of the highway had numbed my senses. When I finally spotted the rest area in Kansas, I welcomed the chance to pull over and catch a few hours of sleep. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few trucks huddled together under the weak glow of overhead lights. I parked my raid in a secluded spot, double-checked my locks, pulled down the curtains, and settled into the cab, ready to shut out the world. The silence of that night was oddly comforting. All I could hear was the soft rustle of the wind against the metal of my trailer and the distant murmur of a few other trucks. I had barely begun drifting into a restless sleep when I heard a soft tap on my window. I froze. The sound was gentle, deliberate, almost like someone was testing the glass. My heart pounded as I strained to listen. A second tap soon followed, equally soft yet insistent. I mustered the courage to pull the curtain aside, peering out into the inky darkness of the parking lot. There was nothing there. No one moving, no headlights, just the empty lot and silent trucks. I told myself it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me and reluctantly lay back down, trying to dismiss the sound as an illusion. But a few minutes later, everything changed. Out of nowhere, a loud bang erupted, shattering the quiet. Someone was pounding on my truck door with an intensity that made my blood run cold. I sat up, adrenaline surging as I listened to the relentless knocks. I glanced at my side mirror, and in that fleeting moment, I caught sight of a dark shadow slipping behind my trailer. The image was brief but unmistakable, a figure moving stealthily among the parked trucks. My heart hammered in my chest as I grabbed my flashlight from the cab. With no other option, I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out into the cold night, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the darkness. I walked cautiously around my rig, scanning the area for any sign of life. The parking lot was deserted. Only the eerie silence of the night answered my calls. Then, as I neared my truck, my flashlight illuminated something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Smeared handprints on the glass of my window. They were dark, as if made by damp, grimy skin, and they led from the spot where I had seen the shadow straight to the door. At that moment, every rational thought in my mind was replaced by a primal fear. Was someone playing a cruel prank? Or was I being stalked by a dangerous stranger? My instincts screamed that I was not alone. I immediately dialed 911, speaking in a shaky voice as I described the situation. The dispatcher's calm reassurances did little to ease my mounting terror as I stood outside. Flashlight in hand, searching the perimeter for any sign of an intruder. Every minute felt like an eternity as I waited for help. The only evidence that I wasn't imagining things were the handprints and a series of boot prints I later discovered leading away from my truck. When the police finally arrived, they combed the area and followed the prints, which disappeared into the dark line of trees bordering the rest area. The officers described the prints as unusually large, suggesting someone who might have been deliberately stalking my vehicle throughout the night. The dawn brought little relief. The memory of that night lingered long after the flashing lights of the police had faded. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had watched me throughout those long, sleepless hours. Every time I pass a quiet rest area or see a fleeting shadow, I'm transported back to that night in Kansas. I still haven't learned who left those handprints or why someone pounded on my door with such ferocity. And I never saw the intruder's face, only that fleeting silhouette in the mirror and the eerie evidence left behind. I share this story as a reminder. Even on the long, lonely stretches of highway, the darkness may hide more than just the absence of light. Sometimes it hides an unknown presence that watches and waits. That night, I learned that even in the most routine moments, the world can turn sinister in the blink of an eye, leaving you with questions that may never be answered. I've been driving trucks for over 30 years, and I've learned to trust the road and my CB radio. Out here, it's just me, the hum of the engine, and the endless stretch of asphalt. I remember that night in the Appalachian Mountains as if it were yesterday. The route was narrow and twisting, bordered by dense forest and steep slopes. The only sounds were the low hum of my engine and the whisper of wind against the metal of my rig. It was well past midnight when I was cruising along a particularly isolated stretch of road. The radio, usually a source of camaraderie, was silent, until suddenly it crackled to life with a weak, desperate voice. "Help me. My rig's broken down," the man said, his tone shaking with fear. His call was unsettling, a stark contrast to the routine chatter I'd heard on the airwaves before. I slowed down and leaned in closer to listen, trying to catch every word. "Where are you?" I asked over the CB, striving to steady my voice. There was a long pause, filled only by static. Then, barely audible, he whispered, "I can hear them." Those words sent a chill down my spine. I wasn't sure what he meant, who them referred to, but his tone carried terror, and I knew something was terribly wrong. I pulled over onto the shoulder, parking my truck on a narrow strip of asphalt, illuminated only by moonlight and the dim glow inside my cab. I stepped out into the cool night air, my breath visible in the chill. I attempted to reconnect with him on the radio. "I'm here. I can help you. What's your location?" I asked. Instead of a reply, I was met with an unsettling silence. Then, as if from somewhere else entirely, a different voice crackled through. Cold, emotionless, it said, "You should leave." My heart pounded as I clutched the radio, every instinct urging me to get away. I quickly returned to my truck and slammed the door behind me. Without a second thought, I hit the gas and sped down the mountain road. The wheels of my rig kicking up gravel as I left that ominous area behind. The voice and its chilling warning echoed in my mind as I drove through the darkness, praying I had made the right choice. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly escaped something far more sinister than a broken-down rig. The events of that night replayed in my mind as I continued my journey. The eerie silence of the Appalachian Mountains now filled with an unsettling tension. I tried to rationalize what had happened. Maybe it was a prank or a technical glitch, but the raw fear in that distressed trucker's voice and the cold command from the unknown left me deeply unnerved. A week later, while sitting in a roadside diner during a long break, I caught a news report that made my blood run cold. Authorities had found a trucker's body near that same stretch of road. The report was sparse on details. The man had been stripped of his clothes, and his truck was missing. The most disturbing detail was that his CB radio microphone was still clutched in his hand, as if he had been trying desperately to call for help until the very end. A heavy weight settled over me as I listened. The realization struck hard. I had encountered that desperate voice on the radio and then driven away. I never discovered who that trucker was or what had been following him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen lurked among those ancient mountain roads, stalking its victims. Since that night, every time I drive through the Appalachians, I do so with extra caution. I keep my eyes peeled for movement and my ears alert to every sound. The haunting echo of that whispered warning, "You should leave," remains with me, a grim reminder that sometimes the road hides secrets far darker than we can imagine. I still wonder who or what was waiting on that desolate side road, and I pray I never encounter it again. Even now, when I sit in my cab under the quiet stars, I feel the weight of that night pressing on me. The memory is a silent warning, a reminder that on these lonely roads, danger might be closer than it appears. I'd remain vigilant.